Hey guys.
Hey everybody.
Welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor video. Tonight we're going to be talking about solo travel therapy or traveling by yourself as a travel therapist. This is a question we get a lot, especially on Instagram, from people that are planning on becoming new travelers soon, either students or new grads. And they follow our page, they see us, we travel together, we do everything together, and they assume that most travelers are that way. In reality, the majority of travelers are solo travelers. They just don't put themselves out there as much, it seems like, on social media. So most of what people see are travel couples, and that makes people wonder if solo travel is an option. So we want to cover some of the concerns that people have, as well as some of the feedback we got from solo travelers that talked about their experience, the pros and the cons, and things like that. So Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in a couple different groups.
All right, hey everyone, my name is Whitney Aiken.
I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we're both traveling doctors of physical therapy. Many of you guys may have tuned in the past for our live videos or on our podcast. We've been doing these videos for over 2 years now at Travel Therapy Mentor, bringing you guys education and information about various different travel therapy topics. So we realized that this isn't a topic that we've necessarily covered in a full scope on a video before. We kind of have touched on it before, the different pros and cons between traveling as a pair or traveling as a solo traveler, but we really wanted to focus in on this. We recently got a question from a friend who's thinking about doing travel therapy by herself. And so I put out on social media, on Instagram and Facebook a few days ago, just asking for feedback from you guys. And we got a ton of good feedback from both current travel therapists that are traveling by themselves and from those of you that are thinking about traveling by yourself in the future. So I took notes on everything that was discussed in all the Facebook groups and on our Instagram page, and we're going to bring you guys a summary of that information tonight and give you some recommendations and advice from ourselves as well as other current solo travelers. So as Jared mentioned, he's sharing our video in a couple of other Facebook groups so more people can tune in with us live tonight. For those of you guys that are watching, let us know who you are. Are you a current therapist who's thinking about traveling? Are you a student who's thinking about traveling? Are you a current travel therapist? We'd love to hear from you in the comments so we know who our live audience is. If you are watching this as well, we'd love if you'd hit the thumbs up button on the video, whether you're watching live or you're watching later on the replay. And I know many of you tune in later on our podcast. So thank you if you're listening later on the podcast. I see Nick is on. Hi Nick, hi Jordan, hi Jacqueline, hi Megan, hi Allie. Thanks for joining. And also one more thing, we're in Mexico still. We're traveling in Mexico for fun and for work online for the next couple months. Let us know how the connection is. Can you hear us okay? Is everything fine with the video? We'd love to hear from you and make sure everything's all right before we dive into tonight's topic.
Yep. If you're watching live, say live. If you're watching in the future on a replay, let us know. We'd love to have interaction with you guys. We are still in Mexico. We were in Playa del Carmen during our last video. We went to Riviera Maya for a week. We're back in Playa del Carmen now for a week before we go to Cozumel. So we've had a really good time here. It's been really awesome. We've gotten a lot of questions from you guys about like how COVID is here and things like that. It's actually pretty good. I mean, everyone's wearing masks here. They're checking temperatures if you go in buildings. They're taking all the proper precautions, which we expected because they want tourists here. So they want to be very careful. And there's a decent number of tourists in some of these areas, but for the most part, it's still probably pretty empty compared to normal times. So we felt pretty comfortable here.
Yeah, everything's been really good. Hand sanitizer galore, and we love that everything is warm. We pretty much are always outside, whether we're just walking around or we eat outside. Everything's pretty much open air here, which we love, and we feel really confident and safe about it. So it's been a really good trip so far. Thank you guys that are following along on our Instagram page. I try to post pretty regular updates there. We got a couple comments coming in. Jordan says, currently working, thinking about traveling. I can hear you fine. Thanks, Jordan. Katie says she's a solo travel therapist starting her first assignment tomorrow. Congratulations, Katie. I hope it goes great tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good luck, and I hope you have a great first day. I know Joey is in his first week of his first travel contract. Hey, Joey, thanks for joining in.
Yeah, so we put this question out there on our story on Instagram. We wanted comments from current travelers, their experience. We also wanted basically to hear the concerns of travelers that are considering travel. So we came up with a list of some of the most common concerns that people worry about. So we want to address each of those. And if you guys have any feedback as well, please let us know, or any other concerns that you might have traveling by yourself.
All right, so we're going to go down the list in no particular order. So one concern that was brought up from someone who's not traveling yet is they were wondering if traveling as a solo individual, if they would make enough money by only getting the one travel stipend and only having the one paycheck, if they were really going to make enough money to make it worth it for them to travel and to be able to afford housing and rent and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and this goes into some comments I've gotten over the years. So I've written about travel therapy now for over 5 years. Put out a lot of content about it, and I've gotten some criticism and things like that, which of course you expect. And one of the criticisms that I get when writing about finances is, of course, it's easier for you traveling as a couple. You can save more money that way. There is some truth to that, but on the other hand, there are some downsides, and actually there are situations where it's worse traveling as a couple financially. One way that is for us traveling together, it's really hard to find cheap, affordable housing. We can't just rent a room in a house almost ever. Most of the time, people that are renting a room in their house, they don't want a couple there. They don't want more than one person in a room. So it can be harder for us to find affordable housing. Whereas a solo traveler can just find a room in a house and sometimes get a much better deal. But on the other hand, you do get 2 housing stipends as a couple traveling together, which gives you more money towards the stipend, and you're able to split that. So there are definitely pros and cons in terms of housing and how much you make as a travel couple versus as a solo traveler.
Yeah, so I think it just depends on what type of housing you decide to choose. If you're a solo traveler and you're comfortable sharing housing, getting a room in a house, which we're going to go into more talking about housing situations as a solo individual, you can definitely save a lot that way. Of course, you're going to spend a bigger chunk of your paycheck if you get an entire 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. So you might definitely cut a little bit more into your stipend, but I will tell you, when we compared the feedback that we got from current solo travel therapists and the feedback we got from people who were just wondering about traveling, not one of the current solo travel therapists told us they really had money concerns. Yeah. And that wasn't really one of their concerns as being a solo travel therapist, was the finances side of it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're a current solo traveler and you're watching this and you do have financial concerns, let us know. But we feel for the most part you make pretty good money as a solo individual traveler, and as long as you're smart with navigating the housing situation, you can usually still come out ahead.
Yeah, and one other thing to add there in terms of a solo traveler versus a couple, in our experience, and we've mentored a lot of people at this point, usually couples are going to make a little bit less as a traveler, like on each contract as a traveler versus a solo traveler. The reason being, you cannot be nearly as picky when you're traveling as a couple because you need 2 jobs in a relatively small radius. So you cannot just go for the highest paying job because you might not find 2 like that. So Whitney and I have settled on pay in some situations just to have back-to-back contracts. Whereas if I was a solo traveler, I would be going for the absolute highest paying jobs. I would be going anywhere those jobs were, and I wouldn't be settling on pay. So there are some pros and cons, but in general, yeah, I think a solo traveler and a travel pair probably end up being about the same when you factor in housing being more expensive for a couple, even though you're splitting it in half, and then also usually pay being a little bit less for a couple.
Yeah, and again, it just goes back to which type of housing you choose. We definitely did have some current travel therapists say they sometimes have trouble finding affordable housing since they can't split it with someone, but it also just depends. If you can find a smaller dwelling and that's okay for you, but if you end up getting stuck in a big lease with a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, yeah, it might be more. So definitely some concerns there, but in the end, I think most of the time you still come out pretty well ahead.
Yes.
Now, the other concern that came up about housing is, am I going to be able to find safe housing? Am I going to feel comfortable and safe there? And I will say we got a lot more feedback from female therapists being concerned about safety.
Yeah, and housing is a hassle. Housing and licensing are probably 2 of the worst parts of travel therapy. As a solo traveler, you have to be more careful, especially as a female solo traveler, which most travel therapists are females. You have to make sure that it's safe. It's probably worth it to spend a little bit more money to know that you're getting into a safe environment. One way some people handle this, current travelers, is they will go to an assignment location and stay in a hotel for the first week. And that way they can actually scout out areas of the surrounding city, wherever they're going to be, and find the areas that are safe. Talk to patients, talk to coworkers, and just ask them, do you recommend living in this area or this area? And usually they can point you in the right direction. So if you're very concerned about that, especially on your first contract or 2, it is not a bad idea to spend a little bit more money to get a hotel for a week, find a safe option that you can check out in person, because there are scams and things for housing too that you have to be wary of. So that is a very good option for new travelers, single female travelers especially.
Yeah, so definitely lean on asking your coworkers and local people in the area. If in doubt, you could also call a local realtor, and sometimes they can point you in the direction of, would I be safe living in this part of town, because you're going to be going somewhere that you're not familiar with. So those would be some strategies to try to mitigate that situation.
Another strategy here too is Airbnb. Obviously, if you're finding a place on Airbnb, it might be a little bit more expensive than, say, Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something like that. But at least you're going to have reviews from other people that have stayed there, and they're probably going to mention things like safety and walkability and those kind of things. So if you find a place on Airbnb, chances are you can at least read reviews and have some idea of what you're getting into.
Another thing you can do here when deciding where to live and where you're going to a new place is lean on Facebook groups and Facebook communities. There's a lot of travel therapists and travel nurses and healthcare providers on Facebook, and then there's a new app that's coming out called the MedVenture app. It's going to be a really good place for people to connect, and you can have these types of conversations if you're going to an area where you don't know. For example, say you're taking a contract in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's a huge area, and there's all these different neighborhoods and all these different communities. So go in one of those groups, ask if anyone else has ever been to one of those areas, and they can probably point you in the direction of, oh, don't live here, but maybe live here, that type of thing.
Yep.
So definitely lean on your online community as well as the facility and staff where you're going.
Yeah, and if you guys have any more questions about housing, let us know. But yeah, I think that is a concern for sure. I think it's a concern for most new and current travelers. But if you're smart about it, and like I said, I think it's worth it to spend a little bit more money on housing, at least for your first couple assignments, until you get more familiar and more comfortable with the idea of moving to new areas.
Yep. So the huge one that came up across the board is everyone said they had concerns about feeling lonely or not being able to meet people when traveling as a solo individual. And this is definitely a big concern, and it was a big topic of conversation.
Yeah, this would be a concern for me as well. If I wasn't traveling with Whitney, I don't know how well I would do as a traveler, to be honest, because I'm not that good at making friends. Whitney's a lot better at that than me. She's a lot more personable. She's a lot better at talking to people. So this would be a concern for me as well. And like we said, we don't have a lot of experience traveling individually, but we do know a lot of people that have, so we got some feedback from them.
Yep, so there's a lot of strategies that came up here. I think one thing that people pointed out was it depends on what type of place you're going to. You're definitely going to have more difficulty meeting friends or making a lot of friends and connections in smaller, more rural places. And this is where Jared and I differ as a couple. We don't mind going to rural places because we know we always have each other. But we have found a lot of those rural contracts, there's not necessarily a lot of people to connect with in our age group. Usually it's a lot of older people, or maybe it's married people with families that just kind of stick to their own little circle, and maybe they don't want to go and do things with you on the weekend. So if that's a concern of yours, you might do better in places where it's more populated, like cities.
Yeah, for me, if I was going to be a single traveler, I think that I would be less likely to go to the rural areas that we normally go to. I would be willing to take a little bit lower pay to go to somewhere that is going to have more options in terms of being able to meet people, find groups to do things and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of strategies that our fellow travel therapists came up with, and they told us that they've used. So one thing someone mentioned is during their phone interview, when they're asking about the facility, they'll often ask about the dynamics of the staff there. Who else is on staff there, and do they get along? Are you the type of staff that hang out after work, go to happy hour, hang out on the weekends, that kind of thing? That might be an important question for you if you're really concerned about making friends. Or you might just find out that maybe there's only one other person on staff and they're an older person who's married, and maybe that's not going to be an option. Outside of work friends, coworkers, there's also other options that people mentioned, such as joining a local running club, a gym, a church, any other type of local group for a hobby that you're involved in to try to meet others. In addition to this, there's the old-fashioned way of just going out and meeting people at the park, meeting people at a bar, sparking up a conversation with the locals. And of course, there's definitely some more concerns about how easy and feasible this is going to be during COVID.
Yes. During COVID definitely makes things more difficult. And I mean, that's kind of across the board, though. Whether you're taking a permanent job or a travel job, we have a lot of friends that are working permanent positions that moved to a new area just like last year and are having a lot of trouble meeting people anyway, just for permanent jobs. So I think that's kind of across the board. But yeah, you have to be smart about it right now, for sure. And
Allie just mentioned socializing during COVID as a healthcare professional has been much harder than usual. Hopefully that's getting better as we move forward in 2021 with more people being vaccinated. Hopefully as the weather starts to turn good again, there will be more of these outdoor events, places where you feel more comfortable getting together with people. I know 2020 was just a really difficult year all around, so we hope that this year will be better and we won't have as many concerns with COVID, with things opening back up, more people being vaccinated. Again, I would encourage you guys to lean on the online community. There's a lot of ways to make friends and meet people in your area online. Outside of travel healthcare, there's the Meetup app, which is an app that just allows you to see what kind of events are going on in your area. Facebook, of course, has just events, like maybe there's a wine festival in your area or the strawberry festival or whatever it might be in the summer. Facebook groups have always been traditionally a good way to meet other travel healthcare professionals. I will say it depends on where you are, because like on the East Coast where we've taken a lot of contracts, we haven't always been able to see a lot of other travelers in our area unless you were in like the capital city. Whereas people that are in California, they meet other travel nurses, therapists, so forth and so on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. We always get jealous of those meetups that we see out west. We're like, how are all these travelers together all the time? And it wasn't always as easy on the East Coast, but we're super excited about the MedVenture app, which will help you to make connections in your area. You can search by your radius on the MedVenture app and you'll be able to find other travelers in your area. So hopefully moving forward, that will help with some of the loneliness and being able to meet others while you're on contract.
Allie says she usually takes jobs in small town Texas and has actually started her own meetup groups as an organizer. So yeah, things like that are great for sure.
That's awesome, Allie. And on the MedVenture app, if you guys want to go like that technology route, just kind of like on Facebook, how you can start an event, on the MedVenture app, you can start an event on there. So say, you're like Allie and you're like, you know what, I want to on Saturday go on a hike to this local hike. So you can go on the MedVenture app and say, I'm going to create an event that says hike at 9 a.m. on Saturday, and other people can join your event and come and meet you there. So that'll be a really cool thing moving forward. But of course, it's always going to be a concern, and we definitely heard from some current travelers that some contracts are going to be better than others, that they had certain contracts where they felt like they were able to meet friends and they got along really well with their coworkers and they were always hanging out with people, and then maybe they had some contracts where they were spending more time by themselves and maybe they pivoted and focused more on self-growth and their own hobbies and things like that during that contract. But the great thing there is it's a short contract, it's 13 weeks, and maybe the next 13 weeks is completely different and you make really good friends on the next one.
Yeah, and that something we should point out here is that not every contract is going to be wonderful. Like you might follow travel therapists or travel nurses on Instagram and Facebook, and it seems like they're just always having a wonderful time and things are great. Remember that people are usually posting only the best parts of their lives on social media. So yeah, you might look at our Instagram, it seems like we're always having a great time. That's not always the case. There's always going to be issues. Things are not always going to be perfect. You just have to take travel therapy as an adventure and just accept the good and the bad. For the most part, usually there's a lot more good than bad, but some contracts it might be more bad.
In terms of the loneliness factor too, in addition to meeting other friends and doing things like that, some other people also mentioned pets. We had a lot of solo travel therapists that said that they got a dog or a cat and they travel with their pet, and that really helps them to feel less lonely. We even had some people say that they foster pets when they're on assignment. They go to their local shelter and they foster a cat or a dog to help them feel less lonely while they're on an assignment. So that's always something to keep in mind if you're a pet person.
Yep. Okay. So the next concern people had was staying connected with people back home. This is an issue whether you're traveling as a solo traveler or as a couple. We also have problems staying connected with people back home, not only family, but also friends from college, friends from our hometown that we've kind of grown apart with over the years. I think it's normal as you go through life to grow apart from people anyway. You feel like those people are going to be your best friends forever. It's not usually that way. So you naturally grow apart from people, but you can stay in contact with people when you come back home. Also, FaceTime has been great for us with, FaceTiming friends and family just to catch up with them. It makes you feel like you're kind of there with them. Zoom meetings, things like that really help.
I think kind of a unanimous thought here was you do have to put in a little more effort to maintain those relationships back home if they're relationships that you want to maintain. It's not going to always be just as easy because you're not so close by. So maybe you have to go out of your way a little bit more to have a phone call or have a FaceTime with your people at home to feel more connected. Some other solo travel therapists also mentioned the options of taking some contracts closer to your family or friends. So like us, we've taken a lot of our jobs within, I would say, 4 to 5 hours of home, where you can easily travel back home on the weekend or travel back home for the holidays without actually taking time off from your contract. This could go with your home area where you actually live, or you could even utilize it to visit some friends and family in other parts of the country that you normally wouldn't see. We actually had one solo travel therapist tell us they felt like they saw some of their extended family and friends more than if they were at a permanent job. And we've actually had this too. We saw some friends like in different parts of the state that maybe 4 or 5 hours away from home that we usually wouldn't see when we were on contract in that area or in a neighboring state.
Yeah, so it really depends on the situation. You can kind of make it what you want. That's the great part about being a traveler. We talk about this all the time, but you have the flexibility to choose what's important to you. So, is the highest pay the most important? Is being close to people you know more important? Is going to just certain areas of the country or certain settings? Like, you can make it what you want. Is having time off being more important? And that kind of goes into this as well, because let's say you're a traveler and you choose to only work 40 weeks a year, and you still probably make more than you would at a permanent position. And then that gives you 12 weeks a year to travel and hang out with family and friends, maybe go on trips to places. So you can really make it what you want it to be.
Yeah, we had a lot of people say, plan your contracts around having a week or two to go home. This is good for your tax home situation anyway, and then also you get to imagine spending a whole week or 2 weeks at home and not working. Like going back home and seeing all your friends and family for 2 weeks, and you're not even having to work that week. Like It's like vacation, but you just get to be home. Maybe you also check off your doctor's appointments and stuff like that too. So those are some strategies to stay connected to the people back home. Somebody else also mentioned if you're in a cool place or you're somewhere, for assignment, have them come visit you. We see that all the time where it's like, oh yeah, my friend came out to California or out to Hawaii to visit me. How cool. They can make it like a vacation, but now you're almost like a local. You can show them around. You guys can have a great time, and you get to have that visit and keep that connection with your friend or family member.
Yeah, that can be a lot of fun. We've had that over the years. Friends or family members coming to visit us on our assignments. And it's always a lot of fun in that situation because they're getting to see a new part of the country. You're getting to show them around, especially if you're in a really cool area. Your travel assignment is in an awesome area.
Yeah.
Nick says the less people, the better. Cut the fat.
I think he's talking about cutting out those people that don't want to have like a good relationship, because it's like I feel like you have a lot of acquaintances back home, but maybe those weren't really good friends anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe you really are only maintaining those friendships that are true friendships, the ones that take a little more effort. I love my friends who I cannot talk to for 3 months, and then we pick back up right where we left off when I see them again.
Yep.
Those are my true friends. Okay, so kind of along with this, there was some mention about being concerned that you don't have your support system. So for your emotional and your mental well-being, this is definitely a concern. That's part of kind of having that closeness. I know a lot of people feel lonely and feel like they don't have someone right there. And I think this just goes back to sometimes you have to put in a little more effort. They might not be right there physically, but they're just a phone call away, just a FaceTime away, or you might have to put in that effort to actually travel back home to see them.
Yeah, but things like having a really rough day and you don't have anyone around you to vent to and things like that can be difficult. But you can make do with phone calls and FaceTime and things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider, but based on what we understand, the pros definitely still outweigh the cons there, even when you have that concern. Now, pivoting here just a little bit, actually, this one kind of goes back to a little bit of the loneliness. So someone said they are concerned about trying not to be a hermit while they're on assignment. Maybe they felt as though they were just going to want to always stay in. Now, the recommendation that a lot of solo therapists had, because we're not all extroverts, some of us are introverts, some of us are somewhere in the middle. The recommendation that we heard from several solo therapists, whether introverts or extroverts, was don't be afraid just to say yes. If you get invited to go do something, just agree to go do it. Even if it's not necessarily, you're like, maybe I'd like to relax a little bit on Saturday. Well, maybe that hike you didn't really want to go on, but you end up getting dragged to. Maybe you end up having an amazing time, and maybe you sometimes get pulled out of your shell. It kind of just is a balance of what you want it to be, but that was some recommendation that we heard.
Yeah, in our experience, we rarely regret just meeting up with people, going and doing things, even if it seems like something we might not enjoy. usually those new experiences are something that you really do enjoy, or you get something out of it you weren't expecting.
That actually happened to us today. So Jared and I kind of get in our routines with our travel life, and we do a little bit of like work online, and we, do our thing, go to the gym, whatever. And we actually met a friend today in Mexico who's a fellow American who's staying where we're staying. And we actually haven't really made any friends on this trip. We've been kind of keeping to ourselves. And she asked us if we wanted to go on a walk to the beach. And I was kind of like, I sort of had the day planned out to do this and do that. And Jared was like, let's just go. And we ended up going, and it ended up being really great. And, we made a new friend, even though I was kind of inclined to say no at first.
Yep.
So there's a little example for you guys that maybe find yourselves wanting to be a hermit, and maybe you have to get pulled out of your shell a little bit. So pivoting a little bit here, another concern that future solo travel therapists or current solo travel therapists have was, what if you run into some transportation issues while you're on assignment and you don't have anybody else there, like your car breaks down?
Yeah, and this is especially a concern when you're traveling across the country, and you potentially run into issues. Like, of course, that's an issue whether you're a single traveler or a couple, but as a single traveler, that can be a much more scary situation if you're, say, on a long highway, not many people around, and you break down. Luckily, almost everywhere in the country, there are obviously some exceptions, but you have cell phone service, so it's less of a concern now than it was, 20 years ago. But it is still a concern for sure. I guess in a situation like that, one of the best things to do, we've talked about this in some finance videos we've made before, don't have a really old car as a traveler, so try to minimize breakdowns. I'm always about trying to spend as little as possible, but in terms of being a traveler and having to drive across the country and put a lot of miles on a car, I think it makes a lot more sense to have at least a relatively newer car where you're going to have less issues. And that way, even if you don't save the most money, you probably will run into less problems in the long run.
Yeah, and another piece of advice that we received from our current solo travel therapist is having AAA or some other type of towing service. So I know on my Geico insurance, I have a towing option, and Jared and I have actually had to use it several times back when we had a truck with our camper. We had a lot of issues with our truck, and even though we were together, and it's nice because we, at least then we still have one vehicle, but we were always going to separate jobs, so we still needed another vehicle. So we had to use that towing service several times, and then we had to rent a car. And then in a couple of circumstances, we had really, really nice coworkers who actually loaned us their car. So you'd be surprised the kindness of some of your coworkers or new people that you meet that might help you. On that same assignment, we had one coworker loan us a vehicle for a week or two. We had one coworker offer to give me rides to and from work because she lives nearby us, so Jared could take the other car to work because we had to go two separate directions. And we have had to rent a car before. So, having some type of protection there, whether it's AAA or it's on your car insurance, definitely worth the extra money you have to pay every month because it can really save you in a pinch.
Yeah, and something else to add to this, I think you'd be very surprised. Most people are extremely helpful and nice in a situation like that. People are usually trying to help you out. That's our experience. And I think that's even more the case when you're a solo traveler. If you go to an assignment and they know you're a traveler, they know you don't have any friends in the area, people seem to go out of their way to try to include you and give you recommendations of things to do and people to meet and things like that. So I think it's much less of a concern than you would think it would be, but obviously still a concern for a lot of new people.
Yeah. Along with transportation concerns and transportation issues, we had some people ask, what is the best way to go about traveling if you're a solo travel therapist? Should I bring my car? Should I ship my car? Should I rent a car when I get there? It really just depends on how far you're traveling and how comfortable you feel with like a cross-country type trip. Most people drive their car across the country. Every now and then we have heard of people shipping a car or renting a car when they get there. Most of the time the renting the car is only going to be if you're somewhere really remote like Hawaii or Alaska. Most people drive their car or ship their car. But it just depends. It depends on you as an individual and what you're comfortable with and, the quality of the vehicle that you're driving. We also had some people ask, is it safe or would you feel comfortable as a solo traveler, particularly a female solo traveler, to do van life or RV life? And this is a really good question. I think you really have to think about who you are as an individual. We know lots of people that do travel solo in a van or travel solo with an RV, even females. We've met several solo females that travel and pull their own camper, and I'm like amazed because Jared always pulled the camper, and I would not feel comfortable doing it myself, but there's so many women who do it, and they are like, yeah, I feel so independent and so empowered having done this and knowing that I can do it. So if you're thinking about it, maybe you can do it.
Yeah, and if it was me, I think I would feel less uncomfortable traveling in an RV or a van or something, usually an RV. I mean, there's very few people that are going to be traveling in a van as therapists long term. But in an RV, at least you have some familiarity there, and you have your own bed and everything with you. You take it to a campground. Mostly campgrounds are really, the people are really nice and helpful, and most of the ones we stayed at had great amenities, and it takes a lot of the risk out of it, in my opinion, because say something happens in your camper, you have the bathhouse, you have other people around that can help you out. So I would be just as comfortable traveling in an RV versus traveling to apartments as a solo traveler.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you would have to, maybe your transportation concerns might be amplified because now you have to not only worry about just driving a car, but you have to worry about towing another vehicle. There could be more risks with breakdowns there. What if something happens? There could be more risks there, but you just have to be smart, plan ahead. You always want to plan ahead a lot more if you're towing a vehicle. Plan your routes, plan your timing, plan the weather. In terms of safety and being concerned about being at a campground, campgrounds aren't necessarily what you think they are. They're not like trailer parks. They are usually really nice. The people there are usually really kind. So in terms of feeling safe, we would half the time, leave our door unlocked and walk across the campground and go to the bathhouse for a while and go do things. And we were not concerned about the safety and the kindness of the people there. So don't worry about that part so much, even as a solo female. You may just have to worry more about like the towing and the hooking and the unhooking. But that can all be mitigated with knowledge. If you educate yourself, if you practice, if you have someone teach you how to do those things and you feel very confident with it, I don't think it'll be that big of an issue.
Yep. Kelly says, I bought a new used car to feel more confident driving to PT assignments. To be fair, my old car had 250,000 miles, so I was due for an upgrade. When we started traveling, Whitney had a pretty old car. I had a car that was, I think it was like a 1994 or something like that. So yeah, we both had old cars and we had a lot of issues. And if I could go back in time, I probably would have gotten a car maybe 3 to 5 years old, where it's still relatively affordable, but much more reliable. I think that's probably the kind of the sweet spot for a lot of travelers, especially if you plan on making a lot of cross-country trips.
Yeah.
So we've got a few more here real quick. If you guys could like this video, leave us comments, ask any questions you have. It helps more people see the videos. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We would appreciate if you give us a thumbs up if you are learning anything. If you are enjoying this video, we definitely appreciate your support there. Okay, so another big one that we've kind of alluded to here is just general feelings of safety of being a solo traveler. And this was definitely mentioned a lot more by our female travel therapists or future travel therapists. So not only the concerns with the housing and the concerns with the driving and the transportation issues, but just being out on your own, because a lot of the advice we received from other solo travel therapists was just do it, go and do it. Don't be afraid to go, have experiences on your own. But of course, what if you're out for a run by yourself, or you're doing a hike by yourself, or you're going out and adventuring on your own? Is anyone going to know where you are? Will you be at risk of getting hurt or, kidnapped or mugged or robbed? Maybe. So I think this goes back to being aware of your surroundings, asking for advice from locals and others in the area to know the good places to go, the bad places to go. Maybe if you're more concerned, try to do most of these things during the daytime. Be aware of your surroundings. We definitely had some people mention getting pepper spray or a taser if you feel uncomfortable. So, it's kind of the same concerns we have just in daily life of being safe. And of course, it's amplified because you're moving to a new area that you don't know.
Yeah, and when you're, especially as a female traveler, but any traveler, if you're going to do something on your own, a hike or something like that, always let somebody know where you are. That's just a very smart thing to do. And, let them know a time frame of like, if you don't hear from me and by tonight, let somebody know. Because there are situations where if you don't tell anyone and you're a single traveler and you're in a new area and no one knows you and you just disappeared, someone might not notice until the next day. So always have somebody that's at least keeping an eye out. And then, of course, stay in contact with that person and let them know that you're okay.
Yeah, we even do this as a couple. Like sometimes I'll still text my mom if Jared and I are going to go on a hike somewhere that we might not have cell service. I'll say, hey, we're going on this hike. We should be back by 5. Even if we're in another country or we're in another state. So, there's some due diligence that you can do there, some ways that you can be safe and, just be aware of your surroundings. But we understand and we hear you. There's so many female travel therapists out there, though, solo female travel therapists, and many of them are doing it and they're having a great experience. So just so you know, if you're watching this and you're listening and you're like, I'm really concerned, there's other solo female travel therapists and other solo male travel therapists out there doing it, and they had the same concerns you did when they started.
And something I think is really important to add here, I think in the U.S., a lot of us feel, and this was my case growing up too, we feel very sheltered, I guess. I guess we are sheltered in the United States because people think of the outside world or outside countries. Most people that we talk to, patients, family, they're scared of us traveling to other countries. So we've been to 31 countries now. We've done a lot of traveling. What we found is people think we're adventurous for doing that. People think we're adventurous for doing travel therapy. We meet people in these other countries that are a million times more adventurous than us, like solo female 18-year-old travelers that go to Asia by themselves and just figure it out as they go. So if you think that, being a travel therapist and being on your own is adventurous, just always know that there are a lot of people doing a lot crazier things out there and they've had good experiences with it. Of course, bad things can happen, but it's much more rare than you think it would be.
Yeah, that's a really good point, God. We've met some really crazy people out there that were like, we can't believe you don't know where you're sleeping tonight.
Yeah.
Like you just got on a bus and we met this guy who was like, my mom still thinks I'm in Australia, but now I'm in Asia. She doesn't even know I'm not on that continent anymore. And we're like, call your mom. Why doesn't your mom know which continent you're on?
We met these 2 girls in Croatia that were on a bus with us that said that they were going to just go try to buy a tent and sleep on the beach that night. They had nowhere to stay. And we were like, what?
We met people that just literally were down to their last dollar and didn't know how they were going to get a plane ride back. They were going to have to find a job, for a couple weeks so they could get a plane ticket home. Anyway, so hopefully, that gives you some inspiration that there are people doing a lot more crazy things out there and solo traveling the world. So if you're worried about just solo traveling to a new state within, to work at a job where you have other coworkers who they live there full time, maybe you're afraid because it's a new state to you, but these people live there. It's their community. It's normal to them.
Yeah.
So I know there's a lot of concerns, but trust me, everyone else has had the same concerns that you have. And I think the overwhelming advice as we get down here to the end of this is, don't worry, just do it. Maybe make sure to do your due diligence and be aware of your surroundings, but you're going to have a good experience, hopefully.
Yeah, and you have to also remember that never really goes away. It's always a fear of the unknown thing. And even that's the case for us. So after we've traveled to all these countries, now we're in Mexico. When we were planning this trip, I was like, I don't know, Mexico, it might be kind of dangerous. It never is. We always feel that way, and it never is.
So far.
Luckily, it never has been. So the world's a lot safer than you think.
Yep. Okay, so talking a little bit more about traveling solo and some of the concerns. We definitely heard some people express that they just felt bad about not having someone to share experiences with. It's like they're like, I could do it, but am I going to be lonely? Maybe, maybe you're going to be like, wow, I'm seeing the coolest thing. I'm out here in, Colorado, and I'm seeing the coolest thing. I'm here at Mount Rushmore. I'm here at the Grand Canyon. I wish I had someone to share this with. But we got a great piece of advice from someone. I'm going to read it out to you. I can't wait on someone else to show up to start living my life. And I thought that was really powerful because it's like, yeah, ideally, if you had a friend that could be a travel therapist with you and go with you and you guys could share those experiences, that would be great. Or if you had a partner or a boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or a husband, whoever, maybe it would be better, but maybe not. There's also a lot of pros to traveling on your own, and we're going to go through some of those pros and some inspirational quotes here as we move towards the end. So yeah, that definitely might be a concern, but you also can't necessarily put your life on hold because of that concern.
Yeah, and if you're on the fence about some of these things, or because of some of these things, you're on the fence about traveling, we can definitely tell you that when we travel to new places and we meet new coworkers, almost always, I think almost every assignment I've ever been to, one of the permanent people there says, oh, I wanted to travel. Oh, I wish I had traveled. So I think it's much more, it's one of those things that a lot of people regret not doing it. So at least give it a shot. If you hate it, you can always stop, but I think a lot of people regret not doing it, so you might as well try it and see how it works out for you. You can always go to a permanent job, but if you get into a permanent job and you get stuck there, then you don't want to be one of those people later regretting not doing it.
Absolutely. Now, another common concern, we'll read the comments later. We're getting some comments here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. We'll read them later. Another common concern here was the difficulty of having a relationship. So whether that means you're afraid of leaving home and leaving whoever you're in a relationship with behind, or whether you're going to pursue this as a single individual and you're concerned about being able to start a relationship. We definitely hear this all the time in travel therapy groups that, you're only in a place for 13 weeks. How am I ever going to meet someone? Definitely a concern, but we definitely have heard some people that made connections, whether it was dating apps or they met someone there and they tried it out for 13 weeks, and if it fizzled out by the time they were leaving, oh well, or they continued the relationship long distance, or maybe they decided to stay longer if they met someone there.
Yeah, I would say there's a decent number of travelers that will travel probably less than a year, and they meet someone, single travelers, they meet someone and they end up staying in a new location. Maybe they really enjoyed the location and they also found somebody they like and they stay there. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of part of being a travel therapist, is testing out different areas of the country and meeting new people. That's usually two of the biggest pros of being a traveler.
Yeah, but maybe you don't meet someone. We've definitely heard from other people that it can make dating really difficult. But I think this goes back to knowing your why, and why is it that you want to do travel therapy? And I want to bring this kind of full circle here in talking about all these kind of cons that we talked about. Maybe there are these concerns, there's these hesitations. Maybe one of the cons for you is, well, how am I going to find a relationship? But you have to look at the pros list. You have to look at, why did I want to do travel therapy in the first place? I wanted to explore the country. I wanted to see new places. I wanted to make more money. I wanted to try new things. I wanted to test my boundaries maybe. I wanted to see what else was out there. Maybe you feel stuck in your current job, or you're afraid that if you go into a job as a new grad in your hometown, you'll never leave your hometown, because it happens. It really does. We hear so many people say, like Jared said a minute ago, I wanted to travel, but I didn't get a chance to, and now I'm here, and now I have a family, so now I'll never travel. So, maybe it's not for you for long term. I think a lot of people have trouble traveling long term because maybe after a year or two of it, you're like, I kind of want to settle down because I need to meet somebody. Well, maybe that's the case, but maybe for a couple of years it's right for you. Maybe it's the right thing for you to explore and expand your boundaries, even if that makes it a little more challenging to have relationships, romantic relationships or friendships or family relationships. I think you just have to look at the pros and cons and see which one outweighs the other for you.
Yep.
So that's a little piece on having a relationship. So if that's a concern of yours, just know that a lot of people have also had that concern, and we don't necessarily have all the answers, but you again just have to kind of weigh the pros and cons there. So let me just touch on a few of the benefits here that current solo therapists told us about. Some of the benefits and some of the reasons why they decide to do it anyway, despite all of these concerns. Because all these concerns that you guys told us, the current travel therapist said, yeah, I had those worries too. A lot of them said it's really nice to be on your own schedule as a solo travel therapist. You don't necessarily have to ask somebody, would you like to do this weekend? Or would you like to go to this state and take this travel assignment? You get to be on your own and make decisions on your own. And a lot of them liked that independence. They said it made them a little bit, a little easier trying to pivot and just say, you know what, I thought I was going to take a contract in Colorado, but I guess I'm going to California now. Whereas, as a couple, you have to do a lot more planning and strategizing on where you're going to find two contracts.
Yeah, I think it's a lot less stressful, honestly, to travel as a solo traveler, because usually you'll have several job options to choose from. Instead of, for us, a lot of times we only had 2 jobs. We had either these 2 worked out, or we had to take a couple weeks off work and find something else. So there were situations where we felt like we were kind of forced into contracts that might not have been ideal, and I don't think that's the case for a lot of solo travelers.
Yeah. So some people really liked having that independence. We mentioned that some people really felt like traveling on their own was an experience that they could never replace. It really boosted their self-confidence, made them realize that they were empowered and they had this independence that they would have never felt otherwise. It really taught them a lot about themselves. Some people said, just try it. Even if it's just for a year or just for 1 or 2 assignments, try it. And then worst case scenario, you go back to a permanent job. That's how they felt, and they said they didn't regret it.
And almost across the board with all of the current travelers that responded and reached out, they all said the pros outweigh the cons. And that might be obviously selection bias, because probably people that had a bad experience are not on our page answering our question anyway. But yes, most travelers, they feel the pros outweigh the cons. There are cons, of course, but those benefits are pretty powerful. Making more money, being able to explore are very important things for a lot of people.
Yeah. And, I know we talked about a lot of strategies on how you can make friends, how you can make connections, but some people said, at the end of the day, you are going to end up spending some time on your own, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Someone said, they actually enjoy having their alone time. Maybe it gives you the opportunity to figure out who you are and what you want in life. It kind of goes back to your why. Why is it that you want to choose travel therapy at this stage of your life? Maybe you're trying to find yourself and you're trying to find a place that you might want to settle down and figure out a little bit about yourself. And maybe you need that alone time and that independence, moving away from your family and friends for whether it's a few months or a few years, to find that in yourself. So maybe it's not always a bad thing to be on your own for a little while and step outside your comfort zone. So yeah, just some quotes I had here from other people that they left in comments. You won't regret it. Don't wait. Just do it. You only live once. I'm thankful that I did it. And again, that one, you can't wait on someone else to show up to start living your life.
Yep, those are good quotes.
So in terms of just kind of bringing this full circle as far as our recommendations for you if you decide to do travel therapy by yourself, one thing that I think is important, when you get to a new assignment, make kind of like a bucket list for that assignment. So we always do this on our own, and we heard it from a few other solo travel therapists. When you get to a new assignment, make a list of things that you want to do while you're there, and you'd be surprised how quick 13 weeks goes by, and you may not even get to do everything on that list.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in prior videos, but utilize your patients and your coworkers as well. Talk to them. It's a great way to make small talk. Just, what's your favorite thing to do around here? What's your favorite hike? What's your favorite, if you're in an area like going to see waterfalls and things like that, people in that area will probably have a lot of things that they like to do that they can share with you.
Yeah, and so, we had one travel therapist say they usually make a list and they start making some plans, and maybe you find someone that wants to do something with you that weekend. Maybe you're like, hey, to your coworker or a friend, another travel therapist you met online that's in the area, I was thinking about going to this hike, or I was thinking about going to this brewery. Would you be interested in going with me? And they said, quite often they will find friends and people to go do things with, but if not, don't be afraid to just go do it on your own, because you might not get another opportunity. And maybe you'll meet somebody there while you're there, but definitely don't be afraid to go out and do some things on your own, but hopefully you'll meet coworkers and friends that you'll be able to do some things with as well.
Yep.
And then, of course, as we mentioned, kind of going back to finding local groups and, making connections in the area, using your online community, use Facebook groups, use the MedVenture app. Someone else also mentioned it might be worth your while to find a shared housing situation. So maybe you look for a room in a house, or you look for roommates in the area. You could message someone on Facebook and say, hey, I'm going to be starting a contract in the Denver area. Is anyone else going to be doing a contract around that time? Maybe you find someone to room with. And that is like an automatic adventure buddy, for that contract. So that would be a good strategy. We definitely had some solo travel therapists say they made really good lifelong friends by who they housed with on an assignment. Let me see if there's any other recommendations we haven't covered. Yeah, I think that's mostly everything in terms of strategies that we already mentioned in terms of making friends in the area, whether you have family or friends come visit you, or you take travel contracts near family or friends. Utilize the rehab team, utilize the online community, and then, again, don't be afraid to say yes if people invite you to go do things. It does seem like solo travel therapists get invited to do things a lot more by their coworkers, whether it's they just feel bad that you don't have anybody with you or whatnot. I swear, we don't get invited to do things that much. Maybe people just don't like us.
Yeah, I think they probably just don't like us.
So, yeah, I think the bottom line here from all the information we gathered from all the current solo therapists, and it's a lot, they say, just try it. If you're thinking about trying it, just do it. They all had concerns going into it just like you do, but in the end, the pros outweigh the cons for them. So.
Yep. All right, so if you have any questions or comments, we're going to go through those. Some announcements real quick, I guess. I should have done this in the beginning, but we are way behind on emails, so we're trying to catch up on that. I don't know how many we have right now, but we have a lot of emails and messages we need to get back to. So if we haven't got back to you and you send us an email or a message, We should get caught up on all that this week, so we're going to spend some time doing that. Also, our course, we're launching it on Friday, so let's see, what date is that?
I think it's the 26th.
26th, sounds right.
27th? 26th, yeah.
26th. So we're launching the course officially on the 26th, where the beta testers are going through now. We have a pre-order sale. I think we've got about 25 people on our pre-order list. If you want to pre-order the course, just type course below, and we'll send you details on that. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Any other announcements?
No, I think that's about it. All right, so if you guys have questions or comments, we'll go through those now. Again, if you watched this video, if you got any value out of it, we would love if you'd hit the thumbs up button. If you're watching later on the replay, just type #replay and let us know you watched, and we'll read through the comments and questions.
Let's go back. So Nick says, a good survival movie to watch is Surviving the Game, starring Ice-T. I don't know if that's a real movie, but anything with Ice-T in it, I'm a fan.
Did you already read Kelly's?
No.
Okay, Kelly says, I'm a solo female therapist. I run and hike alone all the time at home in Colorado and on assignment in Louisiana and California. Do some research before you go and have fun. I built a bed in my car. I sleep in it all the time at the trailheads. It's the best.
That's awesome. That's adventurous. I would be nervous. Whitney, even sleeping in our minivan on some of the hikes with me, was still very nervous. So,
well, you have to be, a little worried about, I don't know, whether there's a Yeti outside or something crazy is going to come and get you, or, people like...
One place in particular in Washington, she wouldn't even get out of the van. She just climbed through back and forth.
I was very concerned. But you know what, Kelly, you're brave, and I know there's a lot of solo female travel therapists out there just like you who are super brave and do crazy stuff all the time, and that's not even that crazy, running and hiking alone. You should be able to run and hike alone, but Again, be aware of your surroundings. Hopefully it's a relatively busy trail where you're going to run along other people. Now, of course, we did hear, you're always going to hear bad stories. I can remember a story of a therapist, not a travel therapist, who fell down in a ravine in Hawaii.
I think, it was Hawaii.
And she luckily got out later. I don't know if you guys remember that story. But again, it kind of goes back to try to let somebody know where you're going to be if you feel concerned about your safety.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Megan says she's interested in learning about the course. We'll let you know after the course. Nick says it's real.
Gary Busey's in it too.
All right, let's see if there's any other questions or comments. Elizabeth says, thanks, guys. You're welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you for tuning in. Nick says, a Ford Raptor would be reliable.
It's a nice truck.
Kelly says, we already read that one. We read a few of the comments during this time. Nick says, I'm currently in the thriving metropolis of Roswell, New Mexico, which is comparable to Las Vegas. I feel like that's a lie.
I think that's just aliens in desert.
I know Nick and our friend George also like to meet people at breweries. That's always a good fun place. Let's see. We read Allie's comment already.
Yeah, I think
Nick says, I'm 100% not personable, and I still manage to meet friends. It can be done. Thanks for the encouragement, Nick. Yeah, even if you're not personable or you're an introvert, you can definitely make friends. He says the solo life is much better. So we've definitely got one thumbs up for the solo life there.
Got that
and then, we answered that one. So we'll see if there's any other questions as we're wrapping up here. Okay, I think that's it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully we gave you some insight, some inspiration. We are going to also have an article, a guest article coming in the next few weeks or month or so from a current solo travel therapist. We have someone who's going to write a guest post for you guys from her perspective. I know we are a travel pair, which is, I think, why we've never really covered this topic in depth, but hopefully we were able to convey a lot of insights for you guys tonight from what we learned from other solo travel therapists.
Yeah, and we've really been trying, and we plan to do this more in the future, trying to get a variety of perspectives on the website in terms of articles, because obviously our experience is limited. We focus mostly on making a lot of money, taking time off, flexibility, and we travel as a pair. We traveled most of our time in a camper, so our perspective is limited. We want to get other people's perspective on travel, and we want to have as comprehensive as a view of travel therapy as possible. So if you have any unique situation that you want to write about, reach out to us.
Yeah, we recently published in the last several months some articles from some of our fellow travel therapists about their inspirational finance stories. We have one coming up about traveling in the Virgin Islands. We have one coming up about being a Canadian therapist traveling in the U.S. We have one coming up about traveling with a pet, with a dog.
We also had one about traveling in Australia, traveling in another country. So yeah, we're trying to get as many different unique perspectives as we can. So if you have anything that you think you might want to write about, send us a message.
Yep, so keep an eye out for those upcoming guest posts. And again, we'll have one in the next month or so about traveling as a solo therapist from a solo therapist. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in tonight. Let us know if you have any questions.
Yep, take care.
Bye.